Okay, and this is where the struggle comes in, right? Because they want to create an inspiration and call that God, and I've seen that many times. Okay, but there's no need for that when you keep covenant with God. So simply lay down the tools of iniquity. Okay, uh, step away from the hostilities and have peace with God through faith in Christ. You have to receive this foundation knowledge within your heart. Okay, pick up the tools of the priesthood and labor in faith. It's very, very simple. Now, verse 19, he goes on, by which also he went and preached to the spirits in prison. Okay, now this is all that he's saying here. Okay, but this is recorded in the Gospel of Nicodemus in chapter 16, verse 13, which you can find that in the Lost Books of the Bible and the Forgotten Books of Eden, I believe it's called. The Lost Books of the Bible and the Forgotten Books of Eden, which I found that on Amazon, which is where I got my copy of that. All right. But here he's reflecting upon this, right? But he doesn't elaborate on it here, does he? Okay. But as it's written in Nicodemus here, it reads in Nicodemus 16 verse 13. Then there was a great voice, as of the sound of thunder, saying, "Lift up your gates, O princes, and you will be lifted up, you gates of hell, and the King of glory will enter in." Okay. And actually, there's a quite a long account of what took place there in Nicodemus. It's very interesting. I'll just touch on it there. In verse 20, okay, which were sometimes disobedient, okay, or in other words, those who came down from the mount, okay, which you can read about in the same book. Well, also in Enoch, okay, as concerning the mount. These are in some of the other writings there. Okay, they went down from the mount. They were instead of remaining on the mountain there, where they were continuing in righteousness. Okay, down from the mount they were being taunted. Okay, and I got some references here. Let me look at that. I'm drawing a blank on some of the names. Okay, but they were being taunted, okay, in order to with like carnivals and all kinds of things, in order to try to gain their attention and to encourage them to come down from the mount. But they were instructed not to come down from the mount. Okay, well those sometimes were disobedient, those that went down from the mount. That's what he's talking about here. Okay, now second Adam and Eve, verse 15, verse 2. Let me go out. Let me read this here. And this is also in the Lost Books of the Bible and the Forgotten Books of Eden. So then, when he had lived 910 years, suffering and affliction came upon him. And when he was about to enter into rest, all the fathers with their wives and children came to him, and he blessed them and adjured them by the blood of Abel the just, saying to them, "Let not one of you go down from this holy mountain, and make no fellowship with the children of Cain the murderer." Okay, the children of Cain were those that were down, that were in the valley, okay, which had built up, they were very using very flamboyant colors and music and celebrations and all kinds of partying and everything else. Okay, working with they were actually taught these things by the fallen watchers. Okay, who had disobeyed God, okay, and we're teaching them many things in order to try to live sufficient, to live self-sufficient apart from God. Okay, and so they're teaching disobedience, which is what he's talking about here. And also in Second Enoch 70 verse 1. Okay, and these are in the books of Enoch, which you can find in the I'm drawing a blank on the name of that book too. It'll come to me. Anyway, in 2nd Enoch, verse 70, or chapter 70, verse 1, and Methuselah began to stand at the altar in front of the face of the Lord, and all the people from that day for years, hoping in an eternal inheritance. Okay, they were reflected upon the promise, okay, which was made by God as concerning Christ. and having thoroughly taught all the earth and all his own people, okay, because he explored the earth and he sought out all those who had believed in the Lord, and those who had apostatized, he corrected them and converted them, okay, those who had, was once disobedient there. And there was not found one single person turning himself away in vanity from the Lord during all the days Methuselah lived. Okay, so this is just a couple examples here from what he's talking about. Right, when he talks about sometimes we're disobedient when once the long suffering of God waited in the days of Noah. Okay, this is during the time that Methuselah was preaching there. Okay, and as concerning the long suffering of the Lord, when once the long suffering of God, okay, God endured the time of contradiction until the time that he had appointed for the flood, didn't he? Okay, that's concerning his long suffering. Okay, that he withheld his wrath until the appointed time. Now, when he talks about the days of Noah, it's interesting because you see this. Noah was the second week. Okay, the weeks. This is brought out in Enoch. Okay, the writings of Enoch, and uh, and Noah was concerning the second week, and there was 8 souls saved by water, right? Which is interesting because the second eighth week. This is kind of a type and a shadow of that, or a reference to that which is to come, the first eighth week and the second eighth week, that there would be deliverance. Okay, which is kind of neat. So the ark was preparing. All right, now this is as concerning a type and a shadow of the covenant. Okay, that as you enter into this knowledge, okay, your faith is delivered by God. Okay, and that we will be received back to Him and delivered from His wrath. Okay, that as the beginning of tribulation begins, okay, we will be raptured up. Okay, this is it's interesting because the deliverance of Noah was a type and a shadow of the deliverance during the second eighth week. Um, so the ark was preparing. Now notice that God initiated this time of deliverance well before the completion of it, right? And so also with the preparing of his selected vessels of righteousness, who will bring deliverance to those who enter into his covenant knowledge by faith for rest and refuge. Okay, and so you can see there's a type and a shadow to that. So it's the same thing what we experience now as we join ourselves to the government, truth, and spirit of God, that we experience that Christ is our refuge, and not apart from these things, but by these things. Okay, and that Christ being our refuge is not a precept in the line that we quote. It's something we experience every day, don't we? Okay. And the same thing with Noah and his family here. All right, this isn't something they read about. This is something they experienced. Okay, and we have the same. We experienced that same thing. Now, 8 is an eternal number. Okay, it has to do with the beginning of the next part of God's plan. Right, a week is 1 through 7. Okay, 8 is the beginning of the next week. So there's an eternity in that. Okay, because it's an ongoing pattern. Okay, so the 7th day is the end of the week. 8th day is the same as the first day of the next week. All right, so this speaks of a weeks without number, right? So being eternal. So also being the second week and the 8th person signifies this deliverance of the second 8th week from the consummation of fire, okay? Which is what we will be delivered from. So all those who enter into the knowledge of Christ during this time of testing shall be preserved from the wrath of God during the week of tribulation, and shall be found again on the other side of the consummation, just as Noah and his family were caught up by the ark, okay, before the flood, and then set back down again after the flood. Right? So also will we be back during the millennial reign of Christ to rule with him as kings and priests after the order of Melchizedek. Okay, this is according to the plan of God. And then incredible. So it's the same thing. We'll be caught up, okay, prior to, right, as the wrath is being poured down, we will be going up. Okay, just as with the as the waters, okay, were coming to flood the earth, okay, the ark was lifted up, right, and preserved from the destruction. Same thing with us, but then it was set back down at the end. Okay, and same thing with us also. We will return with the millennial kingdom, which follows the week of tribulation. And he says here also being saved by water. So Noah's not. You'll notice that he's not talking about water baptism here, okay, but the water of the flood. Right, the same water that brought destruction upon the sinners brought deliverance upon the righteous, okay, who entered into that which the Lord had prepared. So also with the consuming fire of the Lord, which works healing within our souls now as we keep covenant with God through faith in Christ, right? But it's not working healing in those that's being poured out upon, okay, in wrath during the week of tribulation. Now in verse 21, he says, the like figure whereunto even baptism does now also save us. Okay, so the like figure, we are able to behold Christ in this symbol. Okay, and this baptism that saves us, all right, has to do with the baptism of his knowledge. Just as Noah and his family had to enter into and abide within the framework of the ark, so also must we wholly enter into his knowledge and abide within the framework of his truth, okay, being sanctified in his truth. So you notice that Peter isn't saying that we are saved by the baptism of water. And he clarifies this by adding, not putting away the filth of the flesh as water does, but the purging of the conscience from dead works, which is only by the Spirit of life as we overcome our exercising of faith with this knowledge. And then also here in verse 21, he's concerning an answer of a good conscience towards God by the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Okay, it's the knowledge of Christ that purges the conscience of dead works. Okay, it's not the existence of the knowledge, but it's our application of the knowledge. Okay, when we talk about being baptized in the knowledge of Christ, this is a whole immersion. Okay, that we are being transformed by this knowledge. Okay, our activity of faith is being governed by this knowledge. Okay, we are making application with this knowledge and exercising our faith with it. Okay, this is how the knowledge of Christ purges the conscience of dead works. Okay, because we have to lay down our activity with the tools of iniquity and pick up the tools of righteousness and labor in faith. Okay, remember we talked about the separation and the joining that takes place with every use of the tools. Okay, this is the work of the Spirit. This is that double-edged sword. Okay, but again, it's not the existence of the knowledge. Okay, it's our cooperative agreement with the knowledge. Okay. And the knowledge of Christ gives life to the soul, okay, by this, because as we enter in and make application with this knowledge, we're joining ourselves to Christ, and we experience the life of Christ within the soul, okay, as we walk in it daily by the choices of our faith, okay, and it's through these choices of faith that we're overcoming. Man, this is incredible. In verse 22 here, he says, who has gone into heaven and is on the right hand of God. Now going into heaven, right, he is now officiating the program and ruling by his grace and truth. Okay, he rules from off his throne. Okay, as I said, okay, he has completed his work of suffering. Okay, he is no longer suffering on the cross. Okay, so we see that he is now actively officiating from off his throne, and he governs his body through his government, truth, and spirit. Okay, we remain joined to him through the tools of the priesthood, don't we? Right, through government, truth, and spirit, prayer, preaching, and prophecy, gifts, callings, graces of God. Okay, these are the things that join us to Christ. These are the sanctified contact points of the covenant. Okay, but first we must be sanctified, and we must be obedient to his knowledge. Okay, so we must receive instruction as concerning the priesthood. And we talks about here being on the right hand of God, and the angels and authorities and powers being made subject to him. These angels now oversee his work within us by that same power, that same resurrection power. Okay, the angels are now working with the pattern of Christ. Okay? They are no longer confirming the pattern of Moses. Right? The things of Moses were sanctified by God for faith at that time in that covenant, but it's no longer the present covenant. Those things were brought to completion by Christ. Okay, this is part of his earthly ministry, okay, is to bring to completion all those things which pointed to him. Okay, those things, Christ was a type and a shadow in the things of Moses. Okay, he was in part, okay, but now he's whole.